Okay, hello everybody. I am going to get started. You should be able to hear me now. We are here today to talk about Google Slides. So if you use Google things in your classroom, Google Slides, Sheets, those types of things, we're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about what you can do with Google Slides other than just making a slideshow. A lot of us make slide decks for our classrooms where we can share information with students, the daily schedule, we can embed videos, all of those cool things. But today we're going to talk about some other things that we can do with videos. So looking at the agenda here for today, we are going to talk about Google Slides add-ons, and I'm going to jump in and out of this presentation a little bit. So I'll actually kind of go out to my screen and show you where you can get those add-ons and what they look like. Closed captioning, how we can do that with Google Slides, which is great to accommodate a lot of the students in your classroom. How to create templates. So like I have this really pretty template here with the designs on the back and the yellow. How you can actually make your own templates with your classroom information on it or things like that. So when you create a slide deck, it will match and look like what you'd like it to. How to create handouts, posters, and change the sizes of your Google Slides. How to create visual schedules with it. And then we're going to talk about creating Moveable Worksheets and how you can make these worksheets with Google Slides where they're digital, and you can actually adapt these where you can click and drag things. Before we get started here, I kind of want to do a survey and kind of find out who's with us today. So if you have just a second, if you could click what your role is so I kind of know who you are. Regular education, special education, occupational therapist, and such. We'll give you just a second here. Watch this count up and see who we've got. While we are talking here, there's a lot of other in the room. I think that's really interesting. I'll be kind of interested to know and kind of learn what you guys are looking for here. As you guys are answering, I'm going to just let you know that in the participant feedback on the bottom left-hand corner, if you do have any questions throughout the chat, you can put them down there. I'll get flagged for them, and every so often, kind of at the end of each one of those topics, we'll actually jump in and I'll answer some of those questions. So if I don't answer that right away, it doesn't mean that I haven't seen it. It just means that I'm not going to pause quite there yet. Okay, it looks like we've got about 38 that have answered. We'll see if we get just a couple more here in a second, and then we will move along. You know, I think that's interesting. I did not put assistive technology specialist on that. I find that rather kind of entertaining. That's what I am and what I do, and I didn't even put my job role on there. Nice job. Okay, I will remember that in the future to actually put, my own job role up there. Okay. So results of the survey, we are mostly other. I'm wondering if a lot of you are assistive technology specialists now, but I realized I completely left that out of the survey. We've got some SLPs, some special education teachers, OTs, a parent in here. That's awesome. I'm really excited. Let's learn a little bit more. What grade level do you work with? So what, the students that you work with, the, students that you have at home, what grade level? There's a lot of us that work like pre-K-12. That's awesome. I'm amazed that there's so many that work in that wide of a range. Okay, so a few early childhood. That high school only range is a little bit lower, and we've kind of got the gamut here. Perfect. So the things that we're working with today should be pretty adaptable for all of those areas. Some of the things may work a little bit better with our higher ed. Some of them may work a little bit better with that earlier elementary range, but most of them are pretty adaptable for what you're going to put into it. And again, looking at that pretty survey, most people here are in all grades. Okay, last question for you, and then we will get started. What's your familiarity with Google Slides? This just kind of helps me know how much detail I should go into. I don't want to spend a lot of time on stuff that you guys already know. I also don't want to, leave people behind if you're not as familiar with it. Okay, cool. Looks like most people are newer to Google Slides. Use it once or twice or use it for presentations. That's awesome. So a lot of this information today will be stuff that is new to you, and that's awesome because it's things that will give you ideas and things that hopefully you're excited about trying out with your students. So the first thing that we're going to talk about today is Google Slides add-ons. So the way that add-ons work, just like you can add a Chrome extension to your Chrome browser and it adds a little extra functionality to it, Google Slides add-ons are things that you can add to your Google Slides presentation. So I'm going to talk about 3 of them, then I'm going to jump out and share my screen, and I'm going to show you how you can get those add-ons and what they actually look like in progress. So the first one is actually called a Slides progress bar. And if you look at the bottom of my slide right now, you're going to see there's a little white bar along the bottom. And like when you're loading a program or you're loading something new, you know, you always have that like progress bar, kind of letting you know how it's loading, how much longer you have to wait. So this works the same. So when you're done with your slide deck, you turn the add-on on, and it adds that little progress bar across the bottom of your slide. So as we're going through the slide deck today, you're going to notice that that bar is going to keep moving across the screen. The nice thing of that, it's really good for student engagement. They know that you're progressing through. It's also good for anxiety because kids know like how much longer do I have. And then also it's good for you know, front loading. Like here's how long I have to be here. Here's how long we're going to be doing this. Here's how long things happen. Okay. The next one we're going to talk about is Grackle Slides. So this one's kind of interesting. This is a little more of a teacher tool than it is for students. This is actually a checkpoint for accessibility. So after you create your slide deck, you can run Grackle Slides, and it will actually remind you of things that you should be doing. So perhaps putting alt text in behind an image, or making sure that the slide has a heading on it so that your screen readers, if you're working with students with visual impairments, with reading deficits, that the screen reader is going to read it correctly. So this is kind of a cool thing to run beforehand. You'll see the slide deck that I have. I actually purposely didn't put it through Slides or through Grackle, so you'll get to see some of the things that'll flag with it. And the third add-on that we're going to show today is called Creator Studio. Now, a lot of people, and I'm going to say this, you know, wrong possibly, and I'm going to get your opinion in a minute here, GIFs, and I know people have differing opinions on that, but creating animated videos or GIFs. So this is actually a way that you can create a slide deck, and then it will actually take each one as an image and loop it into a short little video or short little GIF. So kind of like when you were in elementary school and you made those little flip books, you know, where you drew the person on each page and then flipped through them to see the person move. You can basically do the same thing with Google Slides. This is really, really nice for reteaching a skill, or for those students who just need to see the same thing like over and over again. It's kind of like a really mini little video model, which is super fun. So before I jump out of here, I am wanting to know, this is just one of those morbidly curious questions, how do you pronounce GIF? So do you pronounce it GIF, like the peanut butter? Or do you pronounce it with a hard G, as like in get? Ooh, we've got an overwhelming majority going one direction here so far. Well, a few more GIFs coming in. Okay, we're going to get to an even 40 responses here. It seems fair, reasonable number, get to an even number. One more person answer for us. And there we go. So it looks like GIF is the winner. However, a lot of people are using the GIF as well. So that's kind of fascinating. So for the purpose of today, you GIF people are probably going to get irritated with me. I'm going to pronounce it GIF today, so you know what I'm talking about. But it's good to know that some of you look at it the other way. So I'm going to jump out here for a second and share my screen. I'll close this poll up. And let's see, we're going to share the desktop. There we go. And we're going to drag this on in. So you should be able to see my screen right now. I'm just going to double check real quick here to make sure. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody jumping in saying that they can't see it. So the thing we're going to talk about first is add-ons. So we talked about the slides progress bar, the Grackle slides, and Creator Studio. In order to get an add-on, if you look at the top of your screen here, you're going to see where it says add-ons. Okay, it's kind of simple. It says add-ons. We're looking for an add-on. When we click on that, you're going to go down to where it says Get Add-ons. Once you click on this, it's actually going to take you out to a little store. There we go, where you can actually search for apps and install them. So for example, if I was looking for Creator Studio, there it is. It will come up. You can click on it to learn more about it, read about it. And when you're ready, you can click Install, and you will have it linked. Okay, so that's how we're going to get an add-on. Once you have the add-on, in order to use it, you're going to go up to Add-ons, and the first one is Slides Progress Bar. So simply, we're going to either hide it, which will take it away from my slides. It's going to take just a second. Now you're noticing it's gone. And now if we go in again, we're going to click Show Progress Bar, and it's going to put that progress bar across the bottom. So once we have add-ons, that's how the progress bar one is going to work. Second one we're talking about is Grackle Slides. So that one, when you go to it, we're going to click Launch. It takes just a minute. It's going to open up on the side. The first time that you do this, it does ask for you to log into your Google account to authenticate, all of those things. So it looks like I passed 15 out of 16 checks. If I scroll down, you're going to see that the presentation is good. It's got a title. The document language is specified. That's great. However, I do have some errors in my slides. So a slide should have a title. So if I click on that, I'm going to see that these slides, 6, 14, 15, 16, and 17, do not have titles. So if I click on this one, slide 6, it's going to actually show it to me and tell me that I do not have a title here. Okay, so a screen reader is not going to be able to identify immediately that this is a slide that we want to read the title on. Then if we go down, we're going to see that the title slide should be unique. I've got a couple of them that have the same slide title. If there's tables, which I don't have, it's going to check those for me. Elements, it's going to check that my pictures have alternative text. Okay, and again, if I click on that, it's going to tell me exactly where I have those, and so on. So it's really good about going through your slide and reminding you of the things that you need to work on. It also is going to flag differently if you look here. So it's going to kind of tell you in red, like major things that are wrong. And then down here, it's actually going to show you orange. So like fine print should be avoided. So it's going to kind of tell you some of the things you should watch for, but they're maybe not quite as dramatic as if, the other ones. So that's Grackle Slides. The last one today is called Creator Studio. And again, this is one that's actually going to make a small GIF. So if I go to Creator Studio and open, it's going to open up on the slide again, just like the last one did. And when it does, you're going to be able to set how often you want the slides to move. So if you want each slide to be a half of a second or a second or how long. And then if you want it to continuously repeat or not. Now this worked this morning, but because I am showing it to a large group of people, it's possible that it's not going to work because, especially those of you that are assistive technology specialists, know 100% that's the way technology works. Ooh, okay, there it goes. So it is going to tell me how big it is. So interval, that we want it to stay every 2 seconds. We're going to export it as an animated GIF, and we're going to click Go. It's just then going to make a short animation for us. I have one that I made earlier just to save us some time today, but here is an example of the slide deck in a little bit different iteration there, but going through the slide deck kind of all the way through over and over again. So imagine if you were maybe demonstrating how to do a math problem for a student, that you could write out the math problem on each slide, and then they would just see it done over and over again. Okay, so GIFs have a lot of uses for them. I'm pretty excited about this option for Google Slides. I use it quite a bit. Okay, we are going to go back to the presentation here. And I don't see any questions right at the moment, so we're going to keep moving into the next section here. So the next section that we are going to talk about today is presentation tools. So if you are using this as a presentation, and a lot of you had said that you use Google Slides for presentations in your classroom, right? I think the highest number of people are very close, people that have used it rarely or people that use it for presentations. So one of the things that I've discovered as I am, presenting with Google Slides is if I'm walking around the classroom, I don't always have a clicker. Because I present in multiple different classrooms and multiple buildings in multiple areas, I don't always have a clicker that goes with the system that I'm working with. So this one was super cool. This is called Remote for Slides. So for those of you that can't use cell phones in school, whatever, this might not work as well for you. But if you're able to have your phone on you, this is really nice. So it's in a Chrome extension. So this is where you go to the Chrome Web Store to install it. And you are going to add Present with Remote. And what this does is when you go into your slide deck, you will click this add-on, and it actually gives you a website and a specific code to go to. And when you go on your phone, you go to that website, you put in that code, it makes your phone a remote control. So if you look there on the small picture on the right-hand side, the picture of the phone, you're going to see that it actually has advance and go back. And you can actually go back, and it does keep track of how long you've been on each slide and how long the entire presentation has been. But it's super handy. Again, you always have the advancing slide feature with you as long as you've got your phone with you. The next option here is called closed captioning. This came out in Google Slides, I think it's about 1.5 years ago now. But this is a super cool tool for those of you who work with students who maybe have hearing impairments or maybe need some help with focusing. Actually, we used this as an administration district-wide tool not too long ago because we were in an auditorium and the sound just wasn't great in it. People in the back weren't able to hear well. And closed captioning really works well for this. So we're going to jump out for just a second again. Share up the screen. So the way closed captions works, a lot of times people will get a little bit frustrated because they can't find it. They don't find where to turn it on when they go into tools and they're looking around and they can't find closed captioning. So the way closed captioning works is you actually are going to go in and you're going to click Present and bring up your presentation. Once you have done that, down on the bottom, you're going to see the option for closed captioning. So you can pick, if you click the little drop-down caret, you can pick if you want your closed captioning to be at the top or at the bottom, and then what size you want your text to be. Okay, so I'm going to stick it with small text for now, and let's see what happens here. So now when I click closed captioning, you're going to see that as I'm talking, it's going to start typing everything that I'm saying. So it's going to scroll across the bottom of the screen, and then it's going to go away. It doesn't record it. It doesn't save it. It doesn't add punctuation, anything like that. Some teachers don't like that, as I'm talking, if I say something wrong, it's going to be there forever. It doesn't. It just goes across the screen. I actually have some teachers that I work with, even if they're not actively using the slide deck at the time, they'll still pull it up. They'll maybe even just have a slide that has the title of the class, and then they'll pull this up. So as they're teaching throughout the entire period, this is just going on behind them for students. I do also have a couple of teachers that will use a screencasting tool to actually record their screen, and then they'll talk through something like this, which will then create a video for them with closed captioning on it. So it's been used a couple of different ways, but I highly recommend people using this. Again, if you have anybody in your classroom with a hearing impairment or struggles with attention, because it really, kind of helps make another version of what you're saying other than just auditory. Okay, can you use your Apple Watch as a remote? I have not. I'm just going into questions here. I should probably say that first so you guys don't think I'm just talking to myself. So one question came in, can you also use your Apple Watch as a remote? I have not yet. I don't believe that particular extension does it, but it is pretty cool. Option accessible for a screen reader. I am thinking that we're talking about the closed captioning. I don't believe if you do it as like a recording, it won't read it. It's only as you're presenting it that it's recording what you say. And can you choose different languages? Not yet that I've found. So whatever language you're speaking is the language that it's going to go into. I don't speak any other language well enough to do it in front of a group of 77 right now to try it out. Oh, the GIF. I do not believe that the GIF is accessible to a screen reader. You would actually have to put it in, embed it into your slide deck, and then you'd have to put the alternative text behind it. So the screen reader won't read a GIF. It's a short video. So you'd actually have to put text behind it as alt text. In case people don't know what I'm talking about when I keep saying alt text, I'm going to jump here for just a second and show you that. If you don't know what I'm talking about with alt text, I need to get out of here. Come on, go away. Okay. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about with alt text, that is when you actually take an image, and if you right click on it, you can go to alt text, and it will actually give you a title and a place to describe that picture. So a screen reader can't read a picture, but if I say, the remote for slides logo and a picture of a phone with the app up. Typing in front of people is always great. I will tell you it's not any easier when I'm in front of a computer, just so you know. So when I click OK, now that text is hidden, kind of embedded behind this picture. So when a screen reader is reading this slide, when it gets to this, it will read that text behind it. Okay, so for those of you when I keep saying alt text, that's what alt text is. Okay, Keynote works with Apple Watch, no other presentation systems. Yeah, Keynote's different because it's in that Apple world. It works differently than when you're working with Google Slides. Any other accessibility checker add-ons? I don't have any others that I'm familiar with at this moment. I'm sure there's new ones coming out all the time. I haven't had any experience with new ones since Grackle Slides. Okay, we're going to jump into making a template here. Again, if you have any questions, these are great questions. Definitely keep them coming. I love being able to answer them for anybody that has them along the way. After this next session, we will, or little section here, we will jump out if there's any others. Also at the end, I'll give my email, so if there's any other questions later that you think of, you go back through this and you have questions, you can always email me as well. So for creating a template, so again, this is handy if you maybe are creating a journal for your students and you want them to enter in information, or like you really like this background that I have here and every time you open up your slide deck you want something similar. Or perhaps I've seen some teachers that they have a daily agenda up every day and they don't want to have to recreate that daily agenda. So they'll actually make a template. And when they open up their slide deck, they can pick it. So the way that this works, again, I have the directions here. So you can go back and watch this again in the recorded version and check this out. And I'll show you how to do it in just a minute. Here is what it's going to look like once you open it up. So once you open it up, there'll be the master slide deck. So you will get a chance to edit the title and the levels. And then you can actually here go ahead and you can see where it's click to add a new slide and all the different layouts that you have in Google Slides. And you can create your own custom for each one of those. So again, we're going to jump out here for just a second. And I'm going to go into a demo that I have. I just need to slide this around here without, there we go. And my demo file is currently missing. Where to go? Oh, you know what, we'll just create a new one. If you guys are anything like me, you probably have a gazillion of these open up. So just like you see themes here, we're going to get rid of that. Now when you go to create a new slide, you can click that drop down and here's all of those options, right? So you have all of these different options. You can have a title slide, a section header, title only, right? You have all of these different layouts. So what we're going to do is create a custom background or a custom design for these. So in order to do that, you are going to go up to the top here. And now, of course, because I'm presenting, it took me just a second, you're going to go into view. You're going to go down to master. And here now you're going to see that this is titled Simple Light, okay? And you can actually go ahead now and change these. So, for example, if I wanted to edit this, I can go in and I can make the background of my demo purple, okay? And I want this one to be, no, not theme colors. We're going to go to the background, and I want to make, every time I open this one, green. And this one is going to be my, daily schedule. So I'm going to put date up here. And it's not going to let me at the moment. There we go. Okay, and I can say that every time I want to put the date up here, it's going to be bold, and the font is going to be, oh, let's go with this one. We would never use this in a classroom, but for demonstration purposes, it's great. You can go through here and you can actually change all of your layouts to match what you would like them to be. Once you have changed these, so you're going to say that you always want this top box to be this certain font. You always want this one to be a certain color. You then can go ahead and rename it. I'm going to name it Demo for today's purposes. Click OK. And now when I close this out, I'm done. Now when I go up here to create a new slide, you're going to see that these are standard. So now if I click this new slide, it's always going to come up like this. Okay? So you always have that option to pick a different slide deck. So now once you create a new presentation, okay, so once you have that master done, it's going to always default back to the original. Okay, so it's going to always default back to the white. And if I want to change to that other deck, I'm simply going to go to Master. And up here now, you can actually go, I didn't save it, and it will click to Demo. And you'll be able to go through then and pick that section or that version of slide deck and then close it out and then work with it. Okay. So that's how you create custom templates if you'd like to use them in your classroom. So again, I have people do these for different themes that they have. So maybe they like that they have a slide deck that has like little math logos on it and a number line across the bottom, and they use that for all of their math classes. So they want to have that slide deck ready to go. They create the template, and every time it's there. Some of you might be familiar with Slides Carnival. It's a website that has a whole bunch of these free templates. Now they don't have like number lines and stuff like that on them, but definitely different themes. And this is, again, how those are created. Okay, creating handouts and posters. This is something I can't believe it took me as long as it did to realize, is you can change the size of Google Slides. So I use Google Slides as a presentation tool. I put it up on my board, and it was wonderfully great. I could put pictures on it and do all of those fun things. But I didn't realize until later that you can actually change the size of Google Slides. What's nice about this is you can change it to 8.5 by 11, and you can create worksheets or printable posters, or you can change it to 11 by 17 and print it out in that size of paper. So you have the option to create these in any size that you need. So in order to do this, again, the directions are here, but we're going to jump out and talk a little bit about this. So we have this demo file up right now. You're going to see like normal. It's in a normal standard Google Slides presentation. If I wanted to create an 8.5 by 11 poster for my classroom, I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to scroll down here to where it says Page Setup. And sometimes you do have to scroll down to get there. Once you go to Page Setup, you're going to see that it's standard widescreen. But if I click down on that, I can pick Custom. And now I can make this page any size that I want. So I can make it 11 by 17. I can make it 8.5 by 11. I can make it 3 by 5 if I want to print off just something smaller. The 3 by 5 comes in a lot that for students that maybe want to put pictures together and they want a smaller image. You can make it a smaller size page, put the image on it, and print it that way. So again, if I want this to be a standard sheet of paper, I can make it 8.5 by 11, and I can hit Apply, and now this is going to be a standard sheet of paper. The reason that you do this as opposed to using like a Google Doc or any other thing is you can easily change the background. You can add shapes to this very easily. You can add circles, you can add lines, you can add images, and you can click and drag them around much easier than you could with a Google Doc. This is also going to come to play a little bit later when we're talking about accessible worksheets, because if you scan in a worksheet as an image file, you can now go to File and Insert an Image. Sorry, I'm going to go to Insert an Image, and I can actually upload and put my worksheet image in here, and it will match because the page is 8.5 by 11. Whereas if you were working with a regular slide deck, that wouldn't work. So again, this one's pretty simple. It's a matter of going to File, Page Setup, and then changing this to the size of the paper or the image that you want to work with. Okay, I'm going to grab a drink of water here real quick. If you have a photo or a picture and want to focus on a person, animal, remove background, where do you go and how do you do it? Now, there are actually a lot of apps for that. So if you want to remove the background, and I'm going to completely go off topic here for just a second. I know with an iPad or an iPhone, I have a couple of apps that do this. One of them is called Magic Eraser. I think that's the only one I have currently on my phone. So I would have to look to give you any more. But I know Magic Eraser on a phone does that. If you take a picture, that background will all blur. Another question, is there a way to get the uploaded worksheet to be read to the student? Yes. So if you take a worksheet in and you want it in Google Slides, it's going to come in as an image. So you're going to need some sort of screen reading tool where you can actually clip and highlight. I know Don Johnston has one. I know that Read Write for Google is another one from Text Help. The question, will text-to-speech read this? Yes, it will read it, anything that you type in it. So a screen reader will read a Google slide. So if I'm out in my Google slide deck and I've created the slide, I've typed information on it, yes, it will be read. If I import a picture into it, it won't read the picture unless you use a tool that you can like click and drag and it'll process it. But it's an image and text readers can't read images. So it depends on how you're working with it. If you have something specific, you can always email me and I'll work with you to see what it needs. But again, if you type into the worksheet on a Google slide, yes, it will read it, absolutely. What about voting? Is there a way to get students to vote on a question using text messages or other? I'm not sure in Google Slides. I imagine there is, but I don't have one offhand. I'm sure there's an add-on or something that you can embed into it, but I don't know one off the top of my head. So keep looking into that one. I'm sure there is a way. I just don't know the answer to that one right off the top of my head. Okay, along the same lines as creating handouts, you can also create visual schedules. So just like I was showing earlier where you can change it to 8.5 by 11, a lot of times for some of our students, we want to create visual schedules. And the nice thing about doing this in Google Slides is you can insert shapes for like checkboxes. You can insert tables really easily. You can insert files of images that are really motivating to students. When you're working with visual schedules and you're trying to create them in Google Docs, a lot of times you're running into those issues where things don't line up really well, things aren't very pretty. In Google Slides, you have the option to move those things around a little bit more. So for example, if I wanted to create a visual schedule here, I would have the ability to get rid of this text box. So I could go ahead and say, step 1 is, wash your hands. That is not a pretty size. The one thing to be aware of with this is sometimes this will look really small because you're looking at the full page all at once. Think about when you're working with a Google Doc, this whole screen right here will be Google Doc, so the writing looks bigger. When you're working with this, you're seeing the entire page in this size. So even though it looks really small, you'll notice this is a 14-point font. So for our purposes, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, but be aware that, you probably won't want to make it this big for your students. But what's nice with this is you can go ahead and create checkboxes here for students, or you can add an image in. And what's great is you can click and drag this wherever you want it. Whereas in Google Slides or Google Docs, you're going to have to actually retype things and try to enter down and do different lines. where here you can just click and drag things to where you want them to go. So I use this if I'm creating visual schedules or things like that. I often go ahead and use them here. Let's create them here. Okay, so is there any other questions right at the moment? I'm going to pause for just a second if there's any that have talked about, changing the size of the paper, creating those templates, creating the GIF, those add-ons, those types of things. I'm going to take a drink of water for just a second before we move into the second part of this. But if any questions you have come up, go ahead and type them in. Okay. Now we're going to get into kind of my favorite thing to do with Google Slides. So I like all of these. I use them all a lot. But this next part is something that I'm really excited about using with students. So this is the concept of creating, are there any accessible templates pre-built into slides? Not that I'm aware of. I mean, the templates that are there are able to be read by a screen reader. I'm sorry, somebody just came up with a question right as I was switching slides there, so I didn't mean to just jump back and forth. The question is, are there any accessible templates pre-built into slides? All of the templates that are there are able to be read by a screen reader because they are created digitally. So in that regard, yes, they're accessible. As far as any other content that's put into them, any content that you put in that you type into it will be accessible. It's going to be those image files that aren't. So yes and no, I guess is the answer to that question. Okay, so creating movable worksheets. So what's really exciting about this, and I've got some teachers that are doing quite a bit of work with this, is the idea of creating worksheets in a digital format. So a lot of our districts are going one-to-one in regards to laptops, Chromebooks, iPads, things like that. Some of our schools have touchscreen Chromebooks where you can touch and move things on the screen with your hands. That's phenomenal. What we're trying to do is we're working with our Google Slides to actually create activities and worksheets that are movable and can be modified in a variety of ways. So we're going to do this a lot of times because if an activity or a task is created in digital form, it's more accessible. So again, if you're starting off with a paper version of a worksheet, or you create it in Microsoft Word or Google Docs and you print it off, now you have this paper version. You've got students that can't read it. You've got students that can't, you maybe use the fine motor skills with a pencil to write on it, or cut with scissors to move things out. It's very hard to enlarge a paper worksheet. You've got to go back to the copy machine and do that. You can't change brightness level, right? You can't use speech to text on a piece of paper. So really have been talking about how we can create movable worksheets so that students can interact with them right on their device. So I've got a couple of examples here, and then like we have been, we'll kind of jump out and play a little bit. But for example, here is a slide that is a movable worksheet or a movable activity. So the way this has been created is the Christmas graphing and the words at the top, and that graph on the bottom, so those squares, that was created in Google Slides and then saved as an image file. Okay, so there's two steps to this. It's created in Slides, it's saved as an image file, and then it's put back into the next slide as a background. And I'll demo that for you in a minute. Then all these little images were put on it on that second slide. So all those little images are movable, but that background is not. So when we give this to a student, they now in that box in the upper left can type in or use speech to text to add their name. And then they actually can go ahead and drag all those pictures down into the correct places on the box for graphing. So now again, our students that maybe would have a hard time if this was one of those, paper activities where you have to cut them out and glue them in, they can do the clicking and dragging here, or they can use their finger to drag them down where they go. And again, the name box can either be word processed or it can be speech to text. Another example here would be for shopping. So again, the images are there with the prices next to them. Those were created and put in as a background. So when I show you the slide deck, you'll see those can't be moved. But each one of those little red boxes can be typed into. And so again, a lot of teachers that do this, they'll start saying, if you see a blue box, you have to put something in it. They'll kind of tag their students that they'll always use this color of a box. If you see this color of a box, you're expected to put an answer there. So it kind of tells students where they're expected to be putting information in. Another example here, so again, dragging the correct number into each box. And here are some examples of worksheets. So again, a worksheet on the over left, which I'll show you in a minute. So this would be a social skill guide for Finding Nemo. And instead of actually having to handwrite the answers out, they can click into each one of these boxes and type or use speech to text to put their answers in. Okay. The one over here on the side, I'm going to click my arrow here because I realize I'm moving my cursor around and you can't see it. So this donut matching one, so this is simply moving the right colored donuts into the right box. Across the bottom here, you'll see this is kind of one of those standard worksheets that you might get in elementary school where you would cut these out and physically move them and glue them in. So for the students that need that fine motor practice, this can be printed out because this was created in an 8.5 by 11 page in a Google Slide. So you can go ahead and print this out for the students that you want to have cut it and glue it on. And your students that aren't going to do well with that version of fine motor, this worksheet is made so that these are actually draggable, so you can click and drag them into the right spot or use your finger on a touch screen. Same thing here with this idiom matching worksheet. So again, this is where you'd maybe move, like you'd write the letter B here, you'd write the letter G here. And now on my screen, this is really small, so please be aware, I don't know for sure that this one is G. So this one's actually created so that you can click and drag the number or the letter over to the correct spot. Okay. Few different things that we can do with these. And I'm going to jump out in just a second and show you how this is done and give you a couple demonstrations. But I did see that a few people have questions, so I'm going to answer those really quickly. So the first question, do you modify or increase the slide size when you make these? So when I make these, if I'm making one that I'm expecting they're going to complete on the computer and I'm making it digitally, I'm going to actually go ahead and use the standard Google Slides presentation size just because it takes up the screen really nicely. So if I'm making one and I know it's going to stay digital, I'll actually create it there. I don't increase the slide size at that point. It's that size. If I am modifying a worksheet or I want to create something that can be both print and digital, then I change it to that 8.5 by 11. So were those images scanned from classroom worksheet or created from image files online? So the ones that I'm showing you right now were created online. These were not scanned from a classroom worksheet. I'll show you when I jump out of the slide deck here in a minute. I'll show you a couple that were scanned in from a classroom worksheet. These were actually digital. And how time consuming are these to make and where do the images come from? So the first time that you're going to do this, just like anything, it's going to take you longer the first time, okay? After you have created a few of them, like, so for example, the social skills video guide, this took no more time for me than if I would have just typed it in and created one with, you know, blanks for students to write on. This took no extra time. If I am going over here to this one, again, this took no extra time really than creating a normal worksheet. I typed it in. There is that one extra step of making the background though, and I'll show you how that's done in just a minute. These images, where did they come from? These were actually clip art that either I've drawn myself or ones that I have purchased to use in my classroom. So these particular images, like the little gumdrops and the little donuts down here, are clip arts either that I've drawn myself or clip arts that I've purchased for use in my classroom. Okay, we're going to jump out of here and actually look at some of these now. If you have any other questions, feel free to put them in. I will come back and I'll answer them when we're back in. I can't see them once I look at my screen here. So when we're talking about digital worksheets, how likely are you to recommend? Not right now. So an example of some of these that I had brought in. So this is a great example. This is a worksheet that, well, it actually looks more like this. This is a worksheet that was used in one of our classrooms. And it actually looked kind of like a combination. So it was this, but with the pictures at the bottom. So I scanned this worksheet in. And then I actually went ahead on the picture and we actually cut this. So when you click on the picture, I used the screen cropping or image cropping tool to actually make this smaller because I wanted to get rid of those pictures on the bottom and I wanted to get rid of all of the directions on the top. And then I went ahead and I typed a more simple response. This had a whole bunch of words up here, which was a little bit too much for the students that we were working with. And I think I have a capital I there for some reason. And now that this is what I want it to look like, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to scan in your worksheet and you're going to look at your worksheet and you're going to decide what do you want to not be able to move, okay? So for example, I don't want this part of the worksheet to move. So I'm going to put it all together. And once I have it looking like I want it to look and I don't want any of these things to move, I'm going to go up to File, and I'm going to download this as an image, okay? Then I'm going to go ahead and create a new slide. So I want a blank slide. And now I'm going to go up to Background, and I am going to choose an image to put as my background. Now, I am going to drag this file right here. Done. Now it looks exactly like this, but this first one, I can click and move this around. If you give this to a student right now, they can click and drag anything around on it that they want. Because this one was saved as an image file and now put in as background, this is not movable. Okay, so I can click and move all I want, and this is no longer movable. So what we did then is we took each one of these little pictures. Now this was this one was more involved. This is not necessarily the first one you'd want to jump on. But I used a tool called Nimbus Screenshot, which is a Google extension. It's free, a Chrome extension. And I clicked Selected Area, and I actually picked each one of these from the original worksheet and saved them as a file, okay? And now I went up and I inserted an image from the computer and brought each one of these in. So now when I give this to a student, they can actually click and drag these where they belong, okay? Or they can use their finger on a screen, okay? So this, again, is a little more involved, but it did come from a worksheet. This is a little bit harder than creating it digitally, but you can take a worksheet and do it this way. Another example of this is we have students that have to fill out a map, right? You have to write all the names on this map and then color it. So we have some students whose fine motor cannot write itty-bitty enough to be able to put this down here, right? They can't write, Caspian Sea in the little spot where Caspian Sea goes, or the Caucasus Mountains, or, they can't. So I actually scanned in and saved this, from the scanner as an image. I had a normal size. You can see this is a normal size slide. And I inserted the image. And then I actually went over here and wrote my directions, labeled each body of water. I wrote down the bodies of water. Now you're going to see these things can't be moved. So again, once I had it the way I wanted it, there, I moved that one. After I said the others can't be moved, I hit the wrong one. I filed, downloaded as a JPEG, and I went up to background, and I added that file as a background. Then I came in and typed each one of these little words, and now they can go ahead and drag these where they go. So now again, the first time you do this, it does take a little bit of time to make it. The second time it doesn't take so long. The third time it doesn't take so long. By the time you're at like 4 or 5, it's going really quick. Think also about the fact that the students that need to have this done are often instead working with an EA who's writing the words for them, or they're cutting and pasting out each one of these, all of the steps that go into this for every student that needs those accommodations. If you take the time on the front end to make it digital like this, now it's ready. It's ready for this year and next year and the year after for all of those students where you don't have to be cutting, you don't have to be retyping, they don't need a one-on-one EA to be writing for them. So again, while this takes a little bit of time, it's worth it. So now we're going to talk about how we can create one. Now this one's a little bit simpler. This is a good one to start off with working on. So comparing animals and plants and a Venn diagram. Okay, Venn diagrams are something that are pretty common in schools. So if I were going to create one of these, we're going to pretend it's not here. We're going to start over. Okay, so if I wanted to make a Venn diagram, I'm going to come to my blank slide. Again, I'm making this in an 8.5 by 11, so it is printable. So if I have a student that does better with a paper version and you want to print it off and you want them to be able to write on it, I'm going to start with that 8.5 by 11. Again, if you're going to keep it digital and you only intend on using it digitally, you can leave it the standard size. If you're planning on printing it, go to that 8.5 by 11. So I want to make a Venn diagram. I'm going to create my text box. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, bold, centered, comparing, I don't know, spring and fall. That makes sense, right? Okay, so I know I want that to not be able to move in my background. I want to create my titles here. So I've got, make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to do spring. Okay. Another text box. I'm going to do fall. Now I could make this prettier, but since I'm just kind of showing this here, I'm going to not make it quite as pretty as I could. Spring and fall. And I want my circles, so I'm going to go to my shape tool, shapes and circles, make my one circle. Now you're going to see it's gray. I don't want that. I'm going to go to the fill color, make it transparent. And now I'm lazy. Okay, I'm going to tell you this. I don't like when my circles aren't the same size. I don't want to have to draw them again. So I'm going to use the great tool of copy and paste. And now I have 2 circles. Okay. So now I know these are the parts that I don't want to move, right? If I give this to a student right now, they can click and move all of these things around on me, and I don't want them to do that. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to go to File, Download as a JPEG, as an image. And now I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of this, or make a new one. Okay, I want to work with a different one. I'm going to go to Background, choose Image, put my file in. And now this slide is not movable, okay? So now I can go ahead and do things like insert pictures. So if you have students that are working with pictures, you can insert pictures down here. Or you can even put pictures off to the side and they can drag them in. It's super nice. You can make things out here and they can drag them in. Because remember, they're not going to see, you're not presenting this, they actually have this space. Or I can go ahead and type in words. If I'm using words, a lot of times I like to use shapes because you can type inside of shapes and then students can see them easier. So it's wet. I don't like spring around here right now, it's wet. It's cold. Okay, so you can type all of these words in. And once you are done, you can share this out to a student in their Google Drive and they can simply click and drag these where they belong. Now the nice thing is, again, you have a couple of versions of this ready to go. In the process of making this, you now have a printable version that it's very easy to make a copy and edit, you know, spring and fall out. You have a version of it with words that you can drag. You can also make a copy of this and make one that has pictures in it. You can make another copy of this and do other things with it. So a lot of times I'll have teachers that will actually title this, you know, spring fall diagram, and their first one will be the printable one. The second one will have words. The third one will have pictures. And now because they've created it that way, they now have a print version, a digital version with words, a digital version with pictures, and it's available to them that day and in the future really simply that they can give out to students. Okay, so I'm going to jump back over here real quick just to check in on the slides because I see there's a lot of questions. Can you easily change the color of your whole presentation? For instance, can you create a colorful Google Slides for a presentation, but you also want to print out the presentation document using a non-color printer? Okay, so what you would do for that in the slide deck that I was talking about, you would have to, before you did that image, you'd have to change the background in that before you saved it as a JPEG. And then, yes, you can change the background at any time. So I'd create the first one in black, and I'd create the black and white, make a copy, then change the background, and then go ahead and insert it with a different color. So that way you'd have a black and white copy and a colored copy. Absolutely. So are these used as whole class activities? How do you distribute to an individual student? So sometimes, absolutely. Sometimes, like the slide ones that I was showing earlier here, so like these, might be done as a whole classroom activity. They could be up on a smartboard or a Promethean board where students can click and drag them. These also can be handed out to individual students. So that can happen where you can make a copy of a slide deck and you just share it to that particular student. So you make a copy, you make your originals, Then you file, make a copy of the slide deck, or right-click on the slide and make a copy, and then you're going to share just that out with your students. So I have some teachers that maybe make a slide deck with a student's name in the title, and then every slide they want them to do, they just copy and paste it into that presentation. And that way that student always has access to their particular slides. I usually do slides in PowerPoint. I'm going to share the slides to the audience members. I'll convert the PowerPoint to a PDF and an RTF file. Can you do something like this in Google Slides? Yes, you can export this as a PDF, absolutely. You just cannot move them once they're a PDF. Once they're a PDF, they're locked. But yeah, if you use Google Slides for something, so maybe you create your whole slide deck this way, but you want some students to have this accessible version and some students you want to share it out as a PDF, you're just going to go to File and Download as PDF. And you can get it as a PDF right here. And it will make you a PDF file right there. If you want to print it off with like 2-on-1, you can go into the grid view, okay, where you can see more, you can change how you view it, and save it as a PDF that way. So you do have a few different options of how you're going to do that. Okay, so yes, absolutely this can become a PDF. And what's the best way to distribute the digital worksheets to students? So there's a couple of different ways. Again, sometimes you create a slide deck with the student's name on it, and you can put just the files you want in for them. And other times, when I'm doing it with like a training with students I know that are a little bit better with digital stuff, I'll actually just create like warm up day 1. And I'll create, if I have 20 students, I'll create 20 of the exact same slides. And I'll just have each student pick one slide and put their information into it. You can do it 2 ways. You either make a slide deck that's all the same and each student goes into their slide. You do have to trust that your students aren't going to mess with each other's slides in that process. Or you create a slide deck, share it with the student, and put the slides into it. Okay, so it takes a little bit of playing around, but it's really easy once you've done it a couple of times. Just be aware the first couple of times it's a little bit, but once you figure it out, it's really simple. Okay, we have just a couple of minutes left, so I want to share just kind of the last couple of things. Another way that you can use Google Slides, kind of along the lines of what we were just sharing, is to, instead of clicking and moving things, you can make clicking a spot in a slide take you to a different slide, okay? I'm going to go right into screen sharing just again because we only have a little bit of time left. We've been kind of doing questions, which is great. So for example, I've made this wonderful slide deck that shows, the life cycle of a frog, right? So I've got the background, I've got and I think this background I either drew with the drawing tools or I might have found this background somewhere. I didn't draw the frog. I found these pictures on a worksheet somewhere. And then I just kind of added information like frogs are laid in the water, eggs hatch into a tadpole. Okay, so I kind of add all of the steps along the way. And then you can see in the first slide, you can see that there's kind of this black line around it. Okay, so what I actually did was drew a line around my frog with the drawing tool, okay? And then I right-clicked on the frog, and you're going to actually go to, where is it here? I'm gonna not find it because I'm right, I'm gonna click on the frog. It's not in the right click anymore. And I'm gonna go to Insert Link, okay, or Format Options, Insert Link. And I'm gonna actually link this frog to a different slide, okay? So every time that you click on this frog, it's going to link to slide 7, okay? So now this frog here, if I click on him, I'm on the wrong slide. If I go to this frog, okay, you're going to see he's linked to slide 6. Every time I click on him, I'm going to go to slide 6. So once you make your slide deck, you can make hotspots on it by drawing and then linking it to that next slide, okay? So once I click on a spot, I can go ahead and link it to one of these other slides. Okay, and then in that way, when you put this up on your board, it's now interactive. Your students can click on any one of these when you present it, and it will actually go to the next thing where it gives you the information. Okay, so it takes a little bit of playing around again, but again, a really kind of a fun way to create an interactive lesson for your students. Okay, we are at the top of the hour. It went really quickly here. So thank you very much for attending. If you have any questions or comments, you can definitely email me. I usually can get back to you within a day or two. I'm happy to answer any questions there. So my email is below, cfrost@disruptive-teaching.com. And if you are looking for me on Twitter, if you go on Twitter, I'm at cfrost_disteach there. Feel free to tweet to me, comment, ask me questions there as well. And as always, thank you to AbleNet for having these. So definitely check out more of the AbleNet webinars in the future and the recorded sessions. There are tons I'm still going through. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you taking an hour this afternoon to look at this with me.